Women of Reddit, at what point did you feel your relationship can no longer continue? If there's no trust, communication, or affection, then there's no relationship. When you're just as lonely with them as without them, when them coming home makes you more nervous than it does happy. When I realized I was living with a roommate and not a partner, our goals did not align anymore. It was sad, but I wasn't happy and he was going through stuff. The older I get, the more I realize I also had a part in it, and that it was not all his fault. It was a great learning lesson. When I couldn't talk about my ambitions or goals cause he never seemed interested, and the conversation would eventually die down. When he told me to pack my shit, to take me home, and then pinned me down saying you're supposed to want to stay. Whenever I tried to express my needs, it was always too much for him. I told him during the argument that he was taking me for granted and he agreed. The loneliest I've ever felt was when he was sitting right beside me. It was a violent relationship and I lived in fear even when the yelling stopped. I stayed for 3 years after the first sign of abuse, building myself up financially so I could safely leave. If you're in this scenario, I encourage you to leave. You are worthy of love that doesn't leave bruises. You are so beautiful and your life isn't over just because you're single divorced. When a pregnancy scare terrified me not of having a child, but having a child with him. I'm a scientist. He distrusted science and was a conspiracy theory believer. It didn't fully come out how bad the disconnect was until a year in TBH. He hid the full depth of the wacky things he believed in well at first. It was so aggravating. I did give him a thorough answer to something he asked me about, and essentially he told me I was being indoctrinated, and only learning what they want me to learn. Boy bye. My degree literally teaches me not to trust everything I read and how to discern good information from bad. He thought celebrities were being cloned since the early 19s. I literally described the process on DNA cloning, how finicky it is, and how precise it has to be. We didn't even know about DNA until the 1950s. When I planned to see him, I felt a sense of unhappiness, street obligation about it all the time instead of happiness. When I began wanting to die, I am now divorced and in a much happier relationship. The day I realized our future goals didn't align anymore, we were heading in completely different directions and clinging to a past version of us. When I realized I was more of a mother than a wife. Last guy I dated traveled for work, totally fine. I knew that going in and that we'd go weeks without seeing each other. That was fine until the novelty wore off, and he became a husk of a person because of the amount of effort and focus he was putting into his job. He would only talk about work, and even when we did see each other he wasn't romantic or affectionate at all. Add to this that we figured out that we had very different belief systems with regards to religion, and knowing that there was no long-term future solidified the need to break it off. He knew I deserved more. When it's extremely lonely in their presence. When a friend asked me what I see in him and I couldn't think of one good trait. Had to make a phone call ASAP. When I preferred hanging out with anyone else. When I felt lonely while being with him, all different guys. When my ex broke up with me, like a day after he insisted on getting back together again. I knew that the relationship can no longer continue when I think about my future and realize that I cannot endure what I have endured for the past 8 months of our relationship again. Now I have the most loyal, honest, and sweetest boyfriend after 4 years of being single. The relationship was over for me when the lying and betrayal of trust became a pattern with no sincere efforts to change. Keep ignoring my boundaries and made up excuses to why. When he would say you deserve someone better than me. Run if he says this to you ladies means he's not willing to step up for you.